Welcome, sentient beings from all known universes and beyond. It's time to activate your cranial downlinks and prepare to receive a raft of discussion on a cosmic ocean of science fiction and fantasy topics, interviews with local area genre devotees, and insightful prognostication by our soothsayers of science fiction, our forecasters of fantasy, and any other beings that happen to get caught in our gravity well. This is the Galactic Driftwood Podcast.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Galactic Driftwood Podcast. I'm Bill.
I'm Seth.
I'm Chris.
And it's just the three amigos today. Linda's
troublemakers.
Yeah, Linda's working. Jenna's babying. Seth is babying a sore throat.
What? I'm not.
I mean, Charles. Sorry.
I just said I'm Seth.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, so I'm confused today.
Can't trust Captain Bill to keep us all straight here.
No. I'm just going to blame it on age. I'm at the age where you can blame anything on age.
Which begs the question, should you remain in command of this podcast?
That's a good question. I sense a mutiny. Well, on this show, we want to touch on some Star Trek stuff going on. So we had the season 2 finale of Star Trek Picard. So we want to talk a little bit about that. And the premiere of Star Trek Strange New Worlds. And unfortunately, Seth is not up on either of those, but I'm sure he'll jump in with questions.
Yeah, kind of anime to watch, Bill.
Kind of a slacker. And
I've got video games to finish, Bill. Do you ever ask about my video games? No. It's always your Star Trek this and your Star Trek that. I'll get to it.
Well, we're going to dedicate an episode to your game, Seth, so then you can prattle on about these games you're playing.
Excellent. Because I have some things to tell you all.
All right. So Chris is a little bit behind on Star Trek Picard, a couple episodes behind, I guess. So he hasn't seen the end, but fair warning, there's probably going to be some spoilers here. Chris has okayed the spoilers. So we're going to go ahead with those. And so let's kick it off here. So let's see. What's the last thing you remember seeing, Chris, in Star Trek Picard?
For me, it was either starting or getting halfway through the episode where it kicks off with Picard. Looks like he's been shot or something, but they were going to some kind of ball or gathering. And that was the episode I was getting into. But I don't remember what happened after that. And where that kind of went. So, but the Borg Queen had started messing with what's her name's head a little bit, and it became clear that Girardi wasn't necessarily 100% herself. So,
right. So, so towards the end of the season, Girardi and the Borg Queen sort of merged. Girardi had to kill the Borg Queen, but knowing that the Borg Queen was essential to their opportunity to return back to the future because of her command of time, Girardi allowed the Borg Queen to slip her consciousness into her. So as the Borg Queen's dying, Girardi got close enough that the Borg Queen could touch her and stick her tubules in, and
it was kind of like, wait, what? Huh?
And inject her with her nanites or whatever they are that course through their blood. So as we see the season progress from that point onward, the Borg Queen begins to exert more and more control over Jurati until towards the end, it's pretty much all Borg Queen, or so we think. But during that period when Jurati's kind of out of sight, out of mind, she's actually traipsing through the Borg Queen's consciousness, learning all kinds of interesting things about the Borg Queen, which in the final episode allows her to manipulate the Borg Queen in such a way that their relationship changes. And the Borg Queen and Jurati essentially form a partnership because Jurati knows from being able to share consciousness with the Borg Queen that in every timeline that the Borg Queen is aware of, the same thing ultimately happens. The Borg ends up being devastated and destroyed. And so Jurati essentially convinces the Borg Queen that maybe the way you're going about things is not the best way for the collective, right?
Maybe going around the galaxy kicking over every hornet's nest and
Right.
being a giant bag of dicks isn't the best way to ensure survival for your species.
Right, right.
Eventually, you will find someone out there with a bigger stick.
Yes. Yeah.
Eventually, you're gonna do something really bad, like piss off the Q Collective. And
Right.
look
Right,
at where
yeah.
that gets you.
Yeah. Yeah. So anyway, she says, instead of force assimilating cultures and destroying these cultures and bringing in their distinctiveness to your own, why not instead dedicate your advanced abilities to saving people and saving races and only assimilating people that want to be assimilated, that maybe need to be assimilated for some reason, where your advanced cybernetic abilities would allow someone that maybe had some accident or some serious disease or something like that, where the cybernetic implants and such could make their life better. And so the Borg Queen considers that, ponders it for a nanosecond or two, which is an eternity for an android. Chris gets the reference. And it's from
Data was talking to
in the from movie. First Contact,
from
right?
First Contact, yep.
Right.
Okay. Did you guys just watch First Contact, or did they?
No, that was just that. I don't know. It's just a common
scene
in there. Yeah, it's a scene.
Oh, okay. I clearly haven't seen
First
Contact.
Yeah, because it was like, come on, Data, that wasn't interesting for you, and he goes, I had considered going forward with the bad option, for like a nanosecond or two, and he goes, it may seem fast to you, but for an android, that's an eternity. He's like, I did think about it for quite some processing seconds.
I remember that now.
Yeah, it was not an insignificant amount of processing time he devoted to it. So anyway, so she agrees and ends up saving the life of 7 of 9, who was fatally wounded in the battle with the Borg Queen for control over La Sirena. And so the Borg Queen ends up saving 7's life, and in the process making 7 a Borg again.
Oh, I'll bet she didn't like that.
Actually, she did.
I would feel like, so in Picard season 2, well, just in Picard in general, there's still that identity crisis almost with her, and when they go back into this time period, she's no longer a Borg. It's almost like a piece of her is missing, because that's something that she's adopted to. So I can see where when she gets turned back into at least being partial Borg, that she felt whole again.
Right. Exactly right. And she even comments that, she's okay with it, and
Mhm.
she has, through this whole process, I guess, learned to embrace her Borg side, whereas
Mhm.
before she was kind of embarrassed by it, I
Yeah, it
guess,
was a
or
stigma, something you
yeah,
hide. It was, yeah.
right,
Yeah, but
right,
then once it was gone, that gave her a completely different perspective.
exactly,
And that's how this
exactly,
season kind of unfolds for her. You get a sense of it. They don't really drive into it, but you can see it. It's clearly
sure,
there. Her
yep,
identity is now different. There's something missing.
yep. And so I thought that was good. That kind of restored that piece that was taken as we went back as we went down the alternate timeline this season. So I was kind of wondering how she was going to get that back, because just jumping in La Serena and going back to the future, she wouldn't have been restored to a Borg, right?
Hmm.
And then, of course, we've got Elnor, who was killed early in the season. We haven't seen much of him except occasional mistaken identities by Raffi, where she thinks she sees him in a crowd, but it turns out it's just somebody else, right?
Well, I mean, if he was killed earlier in the season, you
You're
wouldn't
right.
expect to see much of him.
Right, exactly. Although in the very last episode, we do see quite a bit of him, because uh, Girardi hides the codes that allow someone to take command of La Serena completely. She hid them inside of a Elnor hologram, which she summons, and then tells the Borg Queen, yeah, if you want the codes, the only way to get them is to defeat Elnor, the hologram, who's, a master of, saber rattling. It'd be kind of like, in my mind, it'd be kind of like having a hologram of Jenna. Right? And so anyway, there's
You can't declare that what we have to do to take over the podcast. That's not fair.
That's what I'm going to do. You guys want the podcast? You've got to defeat my holographic Jenna with her katana.
That would be something.
Yeah. So it's kind of a cool scene. Elnor raises a whole lot of hate and discontent, kills a bunch of the newly assimilated Borg special services people. So there's like a special services group of the military, sort of like our SEAL team or whatever, that's been
Mhm.
assigned to help Adam Sung, who he uses. The group that he uses that group to help the Borg Queen kind of retake La Serena. So anyway, Elnor just dispatches them pretty easy. So that's an interesting battle scene there. But eventually, because the Borg Queen restores Seven and Girardi convinces her to change her ways, they decide to let the Borg Queen take La Serena. And so she jets off from Earth towards the Delta Quadrant with um, a new mission and technology aboard La Serena that's 400 years in advance of what the Borg Collective currently has in this current 24th century Earth, right? But I thought that whole scene where she jets off and heads to meet with the Borg Collective to change their ways, apparently show them, the error of their ways, and a new future for the Borg. But she's going to go up against a Borg Collective that currently has a queen, right? Because it's
Ooh, yeah. Yeah,
right,
that would be very well, not just dangerous, but you think you're just going to go there and somehow change their mind,
right,
and you could have
right,
brought like somehow a um a brainwashed queen with you, and you think you're just going to come here and
right.
tell us that we're doing it wrong.
Well, I
Um
mean, it's a little bit different for Borg because remember they're part computers, so they can she'd be able to show them like all the timelines where they get their asses handed to them and be
I
like,
suppose.
guys,
Yeah.
this doesn't work.
Right. Well, and of course, she's obviously got the ability to interface with all of the Borg. And she does have technology that's 400 years in advance of whatever they've got. So I would imagine she'd be able to fairly effectively fend off any assimilation attempt by them or their current queen.
Maybe she assimilates them.
Yeah, well, that was kind of my thought, is that she basically rendezvous with them, links up with them, and through that process re-educates them essentially and changes the whole collective. Now, my only question is, okay, so that's happening 400 years in the past. If she changes the Borg completely, then we don't have the whole Locutus of Borg event, right?
Yeah.
Or
None of
7
that
of
happened.
9.
Right.
None of that.
Exactly.
Interesting.
So how does that square? I don't know. It's very
Well, yeah, you fundamentally changed some key things that happened in the timeline from the
Sure.
wars and everything that's happened, where the Borg was doing one thing or another.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You get rid of, you interfere with even some key arcs from
Correct.
a lot of the Star Trek series. So that's kind
Yeah.
of,
Yeah.
maybe that's
including
intentional.
First Contact movie.
Right, including the First Contact movie. So I wonder if part of that could be intentional / gives reset opportunities to go back and revisit some of those in a different happening. I don't know, but
Yeah.
now we're
And-
running across different timelines. Maybe.
Right.
The other thing is she fails, and the timeline stays the same.
She would have
Yeah.
to validate, I would think, everything else that's already kind of happened.
Right.
So, thanks, Q.
You're saying, Chris, she would have to fail?
She would have to fail for things to remain how we know them,
Yes.
how they play out.
Except we know she doesn't fail because we see her in episode 1 of this season in charge of the Borg,
That's true. Yeah.
and they come through the rift and they want to submit an application to join the Federation.
Okay.
Right.
But
And we see the Borg Queen beam onto the bridge of the Stargazer and start to take over. And there's a big battle on the bridge of the Stargazer, and the Borg Queen is defending herself, but she's not killing anyone. She's only stunning them. Meanwhile, they're using full phaser blast to try to take her out. What's that, Seth?
She is trying to take over the ship, though.
She's not only trying to take over the ship, but she's trying to take over the entire fleet.
Right.
Right.
Which, I mean, you'd think that.
Well, no, all we know is that she connected to the ship and she's taking control of the ship. However, if she had taken control of the ship, she would have been able to take over the entire fleet. I mean, that's why they were going to blow up. That's why they were blowing up the ship, to prevent her from doing that. If that's what was going to happen, they can only assume the worst here. It is the Borg.
Right.
So did they confirm that that's like the end of like that was the loop that happened? Is that she was the Borg Queen coming in that super advanced Borg ship?
Yes.
Well, I guess there is one other thing that she could have done, is that they could have, like, with her knowledge of the future, they could have let things play out exactly as they did to maintain the timeline, and then be like, okay, we've closed the loop and now we can be peaceful again.
Well, but can they, though? Because you've set expectations over hundreds of years that you can't be trusted, which is why you get the reaction you do when they come through this wormhole and you're like, hey, we want to join the Federation. They're like, nah, I don't think so.
Right. And that and so there's another podcast that I'm on called Trekker's Delight, where we talk only about Star Trek stuff. And that was kind of my argument there, was that Jurati goes forward, she takes over the collective, but then she forces them to behave as they would have behaved had she not taken over, so that everything transpired exactly as we expected it to. But a number of the folks on that podcast argued that that would be sort of antithetical to Girardi and her makeup, and that Girardi would not have allowed that to happen. She would not have allowed all those millions of species to be assimilated and made into Borg, and all those worlds to be destroyed.
Yeah, but
And so that's a powerful argument. And they say, some of them say their thought is that Girardi goes forward, but she doesn't take over the collective. She forms her own new collective, and based on her new found purpose, right? And it's that new collective that we see approach the Federation. But nothing I've seen on any of the Star Trek stuff indicates that that's the case, that this is a some people refer to it as, refer to the new Queen Girardi as Borgatti. Right. So the Borgatti collective doesn't seem to be separate. It identifies as Borg, pretty much, right? So I don't know. That's a question that can certainly be explored further, I think.
Okay, well, once again, we're dealing with time travel bullshit. So,
Right.
I mean, if she had gone back 400 years and changed the whole collective so that they were now a peaceful race, only going around and helping people in a similar, and like that was the Borg going forward, you would then set up a situation where she wouldn't have gone back in time with the knowledge of like how the Borg were, and the Borg wouldn't have been a threat then. It you would have set up this one of the
it would have changed everything, right?
You would have changed everything, and then there would have been no reason to go back to change everything. So things would have gone back to normal. So you're setting up a paradox.
Right. So that's something that definitely needs more clarification, I think, from Star Trek. And maybe we'll get some of that in season 3. But so anyway,
in season 2, there's one more thing we should touch on before we move on. We move on to Strange New Worlds, and that is Q.
Yes.
So this whole thing started with Q. Where did we end up with Q? Do we confirm? Is he in fact dying? What is going on with this madman?
Yes. So what is happening is that Q definitely is dying, and so throughout this season, we have seen Picard dealing with some very personal trauma. Specifically the death of his mother. So his mother had very intense depression, and she would get into these moods. She had, this psychological disorder, and the father comments a number of times that at certain points that she seems to be doing better, but then all of a sudden she goes off the deep end, and she almost ends up getting Jean-Luc killed as a young boy. And so the father locks the mother in her room for her own protection. But the mother is asking Jean-Luc, please let me out. Please let me out. He's abusing me. And the Jean-Luc as a young boy doesn't really understand everything that's going on. And he thinks his father's being mean to his mother. That's the impression that he gets as a young child. And so he happens to know where there's a fake brick in a brick wall, and behind that fake brick there's a master skeleton key for the Picard chateau. And so he goes and he gets that master key, and in the middle of the night, and he unlocks his mother's room, and he goes and crawls in bed with her he thinks she's asleep, which she was, I guess, when he goes into the room, and so he falls asleep with her. But sometime in the middle of the night, she gets up and she goes into the solarium and hangs herself. And so for the rest of his life, he blames himself for his mother's death.
For letting her out.
Yeah, if he hadn't unlocked that room, she would have been alive, and maybe she could have been helped, and he would have had his mother for the rest of his life. So he's lived with that trauma his whole life, and he's kind of repressed it. But going back here, Q's kind of forced him to relive it. And so we see in the final episode where he's trying to protect his ancestor, this Rene Picard, who has to go on this Europa mission.
Mm-hmm.
And
Q's been meddling with that. If you haven't,
Q's been meddling with
that. Q's been meddling with that.
Yes. And that meddling we also see is also part of this whole issue with Picard and this past trauma that he's living with. And Q is trying to set up a situation where somebody has to die to save Rene Picard, to save her life. And it turns out that person is Talon, who is one of the supervisors, a watcher from the future tasked with, safeguarding the life of somebody important in the past. And so in order to save Renee's life, I won't go into a lot of the details of it, but Talon has to die. And so she knows that this is going to happen, and Picard realizes that this is going to happen too, and he tries to talk her out of it. And she gives a great speech where she says, "You're not responsible for my life, and you don't make decisions for me. I'm capable of making my own decisions. You don't have to save everyone in the galaxy, and everyone's death is not your fault."
Mm-hmm.
And I think through that, and she mentioned specifically his mother, "You're not responsible for your mother's death either, and you're not responsible for mine." And after going through that, and then, of course, Talon does die, saving Rene Picard's life, and she dies in Picard's arms. He suddenly finds it within himself to forgive himself for his mother's death.
And that had to be really hard, though, at that scene, because Talon resembles his love interest in the
Laris,
in his
timeline.
In his timeline, I was like, how do I say his? His timeline.
Right.
All this jumping around, but so they look exactly the same, except Laris is Romulan. So
they're both Romulan,
or they're both. Are they both?
Because we see at one point Laris, who looks human, or Talon, who looks human, pulls out her little servo thing and clicks the button, and her disguised ears turn into Romulan ears.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So we know that she is, and apparently a distant ancestor of the Laris that we know, which explains the resemblance. But anyway, she dies in his arms. And so after that, he goes back to the chateau, and he's got the master key, the master skeleton key that I think he found somewhere in the chateau during this season. And he hung on to it. Well, he takes it and he removes the brick and puts the skeleton key behind and replaces the brick for his young self to find, thereby allowing that sequence of events to
happen,
to take place. Whereas he originally took the key and wasn't going to do that because he thought, maybe I can change the past.
Picard, you should know better.
Right. And my mother could be alive. But then he realizes that. And as soon as he does that, he hears the voice of Q. And Q, he finds Q sitting in the solarium waiting for him. And he said, I told you that this season was about forgiveness. And he goes, it wasn't about you seeking forgiveness from someone else or you forgiving someone else. It was about you forgiving yourself. And he said, this was my gift to you because I'm dying. And
Okay.
yeah,
It gives the weirdest gifts.
I know.
Well, that's his style is these
Yeah,
trials, right? That's always
right.
been his thing. He's got this big enigma of a situation that he presents you, and this one was the messiest one of all.
Yeah.
Yes.
But
Yeah,
to some extent, I don't know if Q's just a genius, you know, in that respect, to where he knows
right.
it's all going to work out, or like, because
I don't know.
he's pulling strings, but he's also letting them do what they're going to do,
Right.
and that could
So,
Right.
easily backfire. Like,
It could,
yeah.
right.
So is it
Right.
just Q who's dying, or is it the whole continuum for some reason, or what?
Well, we don't, it's not really made clear.
Q
But
specifically, though, they let us know is
we
dying.
know Q specifically is dying, and we know that he is dying alone,
Hmm.
Mm.
which makes me think that, there is no other continuum left because he had a son and a wife in the
Maybe he's the
continuum.
last one.
That's what I'm wondering, because
Mm.
we don't know. I mean, he can jump forward and backward in time. So this could be thousands of years after we last saw him in the next generation, right?
Mhm.
And he could have jumped to this point to, before he died, to fix something in Picard's life. But anyway, he tells Picard, uh, when he realizes that this whole thing was so that he could forgive himself. He said, it's so that you can forgive yourself. And if you can forgive yourself, and learn to love the person who you are, maybe you can allow someone else to love you as well. Because
That is
remember,
a double. Yeah,
he's
Mhm.
never
yeah.
had a
It's a
relationship with
double
anyone.
reward.
Right. And so
That should
this
help with
is
Laris then.
I was gonna
exactly,
say
that's
he did all this to hook Picard up with Laris.
apparently.
That's one hell of a wingman right there.
I know it.
Right?
Right.
Holy crap!
Right. So yeah, and so Picard says, well, why? And Q's like, well, finish the sentence. And he says, why me? And he said, even gods have favorites.
Hmm.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah.
If anyone deserved it, you know, Q
Yeah.
figured my final act, I'll give Picard the one thing he probably needs most.
Right. And it was a very, very emotional scene. I'm kind of getting
Sounds like it.
emotional
Like,
now just thinking about it.
just
But
thinking about it. No, that's
yeah.
pretty.
Yeah.
I really want to watch it, finish it now, because
Yeah.
that's pretty huge. That's closing a chapter in Picard's life,
Yeah.
that I don't know of any other way it could have been done.
No, I don't either. It was
It
amazing.
would take a Q to do that.
Yeah.
Mhm.
It was an amazing, very emotional set. I have your Kleenex box ready for sure.
Yeah.
And we do get a surprise cameo from Wesley Crusher.
That's what I've been hearing.
Oh, okay, yeah. I
Yeah.
wasn't sure when he was supposed to make his appearance.
Did
So
he
Yeah.
come along with a time van?
He so
Referencing-
he became a traveler,
Right.
right? And so that's what he is, a traveler. And so Adam Sung's daughter, Kore, he comes and finds her. And his purpose is to invite her to join the travelers as a supervisor. And so she accepts that mission. So they run the supervisors. They try to make sure that the galaxy and the universe unfolds in the right way, and that certain people are protected to allow that to happen, to allow the universe to unfold the way it should. So that was really a cool thing too. And yeah, there were a lot of cool things in the ending. Definitely recommend watching that.
Yeah, I've seen a couple posts from Will Wheaton, who is just over the moon that he got to come back as
Wesley. Yeah, and I watched After Trek with him too, or the Ready Room. Sorry.
Mhm.
where he talked a little bit about that and how emotional it was for him to be able to play that character again and kind of get some closure around it. But some people have commented that his portrayal seemed more like Will Wheaton than Wesley Crusher. But it was good. I liked it.
All right.
Well,
yeah, I liked it. So
I mean, Wesley was a kid when he still a kind of a kid when he poofed out of the series.
right. There's
he would have had a lot of growing up to do.
Yeah, there's a picture of the final scene there between Q and, well, almost the final scene between Q and Picard, where he's explaining everything to him. But yeah, yeah, it was. He was just a kid when he left, and so it was. I'm happy that he was able to be in the show and get some closure around his character and his character's arc. So that was very cool. But yeah, if you haven't seen season 2 of Star Trek Picard, definitely worth watching. And the ending, I thought they did a great job on the season finale. And they kind of set up some things there. So we see, at the end, basically it cycles back to the Bridge of the Stargazer with Picard doing the self-destruct. And because of everything he's been through, and he realizes now that the Borg Queen that's beamed onto the Stargazer is actually Jurati. And so he cancels the self-destruct. And he finds out that Jurati, as the Borg Queen, was trying to take over command of the fleet because the Borg is aware of this subspace rupture or something that's being artificially generated, and we don't know by whom yet, but that the generation of this thing, the generation of this thing is going to release this, gamma ray burst or something that's so powerful it's going to eradicate all life in the Alpha sector. But that if the Borg takes command of the entire fleet, and you've got the Borg and the Federation fleet, and they synchronize their shields in front of this thing, they can block that pulse and save all the life in the Alpha Quadrant. So Picard gives, because Rios isn't there anymore, Rios decided to stay in the past. Picard gives 7 of 9 a field commission to Starfleet captain and gives her command of the Stargazer, since she's so familiar with Borg technology. So she works with the Queen. They set up this big deflector thing using all of the ships, and they save the Alpha Quadrant. And then Jurati says the Borg are going to stay there and monitor this, because this is essentially, when it's done, it's created the equivalent of a transwarp conduit to somewhere, and they're going to monitor it to see what, if anything, might come out of it. And I think that goes into season 3.
Okay.
So
something expecting a new Alpha Quadrant that's right for exploitation, maybe.
Yeah, and I think this all makes sense with this going into season 3, because if you think about, and I've read some of this online, and it makes a lot of sense that if you remember Star Trek: The Undiscovered Country, where Kirk and the Klingons are trying to make peace and join the Federation, right? And Kirk, of course, blames the Klingons for the death of his son, and the entire crew of the Enterprise has had nothing but negative encounters with the Klingons, and yet they managed to do a 180 in that, and realize that they weren't giving the Klingons a fair shake and weren't trusting them, and that they become responsible for ensuring that the Klingons are able to join the Federation. And I think that maybe season 3 sets up a similar Undiscovered Country event for Picard and the crew of the Next Generation, which maybe explains how they come in, and that there's some conspiracy to prevent the Borg from joining the Federation because they're submitting their application now, and that maybe it's Picard and the Next Gen crew that defeat whatever plan it is to stop the Borg from joining, and that sort of completes their arc to be from the Borg being their greatest nemesis to now them helping to ensure that they can join the Federation.
Makes
So
sense.
yeah, so I think I'm looking forward to it. I think that presents a pretty good thing for season 3. So anyway, but let's jump into Strange New Worlds real quick. We're kind of already running a little bit long
Yeah,
here.
we're already over time. So how much are you going to talk about Strange New Worlds?
Well, I tell you what, maybe we'll save that for the next show, because then we'll
Sure,
have
yeah.
a couple more episodes in, and
Yeah.
and we can we'll have a better feeling about where they're going and how things are going along. But I do so far like it. I love the first episode. So.
Yep, I'd agree. Give it
Yeah.
a try if you haven't watched it.
I plan
Yeah,
on it.
and then
Brand
join
new
us-
Star Trek score too, which is really cool.
Yes. Yeah.
Yep.
I love the opening credits and everything. And yeah, it looks like it's going to be a hell of a ride. So check it out. And we won't talk about it on the next show, but the show after that should have about three of the first season shows under its belt by then.
Mhm.
So anyway, I think that'll wrap it for this time. Tune in next time. We're going to be talking about some upcoming science fiction shows and movies, as well as a body horror film that's coming out that might be a
Good body
particular.
horror. That's my favorite kind of horror.
Yes, yes. Well, I think our friend Benito would love this. So, yeah. So anyway, join us next time for that. And until then,
Comment
take
down
care.
below. Also, let us know what you thought about Picard.
Yes. Yeah. Let us know if you've watched it. So we will catch y'all later.
Yeah, don't forget to like, share, subscribe. Check out our sister shows on Synergy Nation.
All right.
synnation.net.
Peace.
Take care. Live long and prosper.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Galactic Driftwood podcast. For more information and past episodes, please visit our website at galacticdriftwood.space or subscribe to us on YouTube. And now, please deactivate your cranial downlinks, collect your towels, and be sure to watch your step as you exit our gravity well.